If you had to choose one case that shocked all of South Korea in recent years, the story of Lee Eun-hae and her ill-fated husband, Joon Sang-yeob, would undoubtedly be at the top of the list. What seemed like a tragic drowning accident turned out to be a labyrinth of lies and betrayal, meticulously orchestrated. From a grieving wife crying on television pleading for justice, she gradually revealed her true face as a cold-blooded mastermind who turned love into a tool and human life into a bargaining chip for money. This case not only forced South Korean police to reopen files after nearly 2 years, but even overshadowed the presidential election itself. What really happened in Gapyeong Valley that night? On June 30th, 2019, a 39-year-old man named Joon Sang-yeob, along with his wife and a group of close friends, decided to take a short camping trip to Gapyeong Valley, famous for its picturesque streams and fresh air. Everything seemed cheerful, with laughter mingling with the sound of babbling water, seemingly promising a perfect day off. However, when night fell, tragedy struck unexpectedly. Around 8 p.m., Sang-yeob suddenly slipped and fell into the stream. No one in the group, not even his wife, realized what had just happened. Because of this, they inadvertently missed the critical window to save him from death. By the time everyone noticed, it was too late. Sang-yeob showed no signs of life. In panic and grief, the group quickly called the police. After authorities arrived at the scene and conducted a careful examination, initial results indicated the victim died from accidental drowning, with no signs of external force or criminal activity. Everything seemed to point to only one conclusion: a tragic accident. Therefore, police quickly closed the file, treating it as an ordinary drowning incident with no suspects or unusual signs requiring further investigation. And so, like many other accidents, the story gradually faded into silence. Although it occurred in a popular tourist area with heavy foot traffic, the incident quickly sank into obscurity, with many people never even hearing about it. However, just a few months later, a name that had been buried in silence suddenly reappeared on national television. In November of the same year, Lee Yunhi, Sang-yeob's wife, unexpectedly registered to participate in the South Korean Broadcasting System's program Unanswered Questions. This was a famous show specializing in investigating mysterious cases, hidden corners, and pressing social issues in South Korea, which had caused public uproar many times before. In front of the cameras, Lee Eun-hae accused a major insurance company of continuously refusing to pay insurance benefits after her husband's sudden death. Before passing away forever, Sang-yeob had purchased a life insurance policy for himself. According to the contract, if he were to suffer an accident or pass away, the insurance company would have to pay his next of kin up to 800 million won, approximately $600,000. Since her husband's death, Eun-hae had continuously sent requests to the insurance company, demanding payment of this money on the grounds that she was the legal beneficiary. However, the company remained hesitant and suspicious, noticing many unusual details in the file, especially circumstances surrounding Sang-yeob's death. They suspected the wife might be directly involved in the accident and firmly refused compensation. Refusing to accept the rejection, Eun-hae began presenting herself as a weak and pitiful woman, a lonely widow seeking justice in a cold society. She proactively contacted the production team of Unanswered Questions, hoping they would help her reclaim fairness. During the filming, Eun-hae recounted her story in a trembling voice. She and her husband had been married for 8 years, had loved each other deeply, and lived simply and happily. Since his sudden departure, she had to live alone in an empty house, relying on meager subsidies to get by. She said she only wanted to receive the insurance money she deserved to continue her life, but for many months, the insurance company had firmly refused, leaving her stuck and desperate. After the production team listened to the touching story Yun-hae shared, they couldn't help but feel deep sympathy for this seemingly weak and helpless woman. The image of a widowed wife facing the pain of losing her beloved husband, while also being denied payment by the insurance company, truly touched the hearts of the entire production staff. Therefore, with a sense of social responsibility and a desire to stand on the side of the vulnerable, they decided not to sit idle, but would take action to help her reclaim justice and recover the insurance money she deserved. Based on this determination, the show's reporters began investigating seriously and meticulously to clarify the truth behind this seemingly simple case. However, when they began investigating deeper into the insurance company and the circumstances surrounding Joon Sang-yeob's death, the reporters gradually discovered a major conspiracy hiding behind it. This entire matter was not at all as simple as it appeared. Instead, everything was full of overly strange coincidences and inexplicable abnormalities. First and most suspicious, Joon Sang-yeob was someone who had a great fear of water and couldn't swim at all. According to acquaintances, he had almost never participated in any recreational activities involving water. Yet strangely, why did he agree to go camping on that trip at a location right next to a stream where the risk of water contact was very high? Next, according to what was known from the scene, the distance between Sang-yeob's position when he fell into the water and where Eun-hae was standing at that time was really not far at all. In theory, with such a distance, especially in the relatively quiet space of the stream area in the evening, could Yun-hae really not have heard her husband's cries for help? Adding another detail that made the investigation team even more alarmed was Yun-hae's attitude and actions immediately after the tragedy occurred. After her husband had an accident and died, Yun-hae as his wife seemed to show no grief or regret whatsoever. In fact, shortly after, she hastily took her husband's laptop along with a large amount of cash, then used that money to arrange overseas trips as if nothing serious had just happened in her life. And finally, most importantly, the time Sang-yeob died was around 8 p.m. on June 30th, 2019. According to the contract terms, if after midnight that night the insurance premium was not paid, the contract would automatically become invalid. In other words, in just 4 more hours, the entire value of that insurance package would be erased. And coincidentally, or perhaps not at all coincidentally, precisely within those 4 short hours, Joon Sang-yeob died from accidental drowning. It was hard to believe all this was just random coincidence. The reporter team's investigation was finally broadcast on national television. And just hours after airing, the program created an earthquake in South Korean public opinion. Millions of viewers were drawn into details that seemed like something from a movie: suspicious coincidences, the wife's abnormal behavior, and especially the death timing that perfectly matched the insurance contract deadline. Immediately after the program aired, debates erupted everywhere. Many believed this couldn't just be a random accident, while others argued it was all still speculation. Under strong pressure from public opinion and newly disclosed evidence, the production team sent all investigation results to the police. And then, on February 2nd, 2021, South Korean police officially decided to reopen the file on Joon Sang-yeob's drowning case, marking a major turning point in the journey to find the truth. After 9 months of meticulous investigation and cross-checking every detail, the prosecution finally released official results. So what was the truth here? Let's return to the day of the incident once more. On June 30th, 2019, Lee Eun-hae proactively organized and arranged a camping trip to Gapyeong Valley, inviting her group of friends along, a total of 7 people. To better understand the overall picture and the complex relationships behind this trip, we first need to categorize and clarify the relationships among each person in that group of 7. The first couple was Lee Eun-hae and her husband Joon Sang-yeob. The second couple consisted of a man surnamed Lee and his girlfriend, a young woman named Choi. Next was the third couple, including Kim and his girlfriend, also surnamed Lee. And finally, the 7th person in the group, who played the role of third wheel among the couples, was Cho Hyun-soo. And particularly, we must pay special attention to this character, Cho Hyun-soo, because he wasn't just an ordinary friend or random member of the trip. First, he was the same age as Eun-hae, and much more importantly, he and Eun-hae were secret lovers. Naturally, Sang-yeob, Lee Eun-hae's legal husband, had absolutely no idea that he was being blatantly betrayed by his wife. But it didn't stop there. Not only did Eun-hae have a secret lover, but she also maintained an ambiguous relationship with the man surnamed Lee, who was there with his girlfriend on this camping trip. The matter became even more suspicious when looking at the group's composition. Of the 7 people on this fateful trip, besides his wife, Lee Eun-hae, Joon Sang-yeob didn't know anyone at all, All the others were Eun-hae's friends she had invited. Around 3 p.m. that day, all 7 people arrived at the beautiful Gapyeong waterfall area to have fun. People in the group took turns jumping into the stream to swim and play with each other. However, amid the general cheerful atmosphere, there was one person who appeared completely different. That was Joon Sang-yeob. Due to his innate fear of water and complete inability to swim, he refused to jump into the water with everyone else. But notably, Lee Eun-hae, his wife, wouldn't accept this refusal. She insisted on forcing her husband to participate in the water activity and finally convinced him to sit on a large swimming float. Right after Joon Sang-yeob reluctantly sat on the float, Hyun-soo, Lee Eun-hae's secret lover, proactively swam over and began slowly pulling that float away from shore toward an area with much deeper water. This action immediately caused Joon Sang-yeob to fall into a state of extreme panic and fear. He continuously spoke up, pleading and begging, but Cho Hyun-soo seemed completely unconcerned with those desperate pleas. He calmly continued pulling the float farther and farther from shore. While this tense and dangerous scene was unfolding right before their eyes, Lee Eun-hae leisurely sat relaxing on shore, cooling off and chatting with others as if nothing worrying was happening to her husband. She didn't even intend to intervene or ask Cho Hyun-soo to stop. Joon Sang-yeob, in his panic, tried using both hands to paddle and struggle to bring the float back toward shore himself. But right then, Cho Hyun-soo suddenly shook the float violently from below the water, creating strong jerks that made the float rock intensely. This movement caused Joon Sang-yeob to completely lose his balance. He panicked to the point of only being able to cling to the float and continuously plead with a desperately trembling voice. When watching this video again, anyone could clearly recognize that Joon Sang-yeob was truly very frightened. After this video was made public on social media, it quickly attracted public attention and within 1 week had over 5 million views, even surpassing the South Korean presidential election at that time. Returning to the events of that fateful day, around 8 p.m., when the sky had gradually turned dark, the entire group felt tired after a long day of activities and was ready to prepare to leave. Kim and his girlfriend Lee proactively left the waterfall area, heading to the parking lot to prepare to depart first. But right at this moment, just when everyone thought the trip was complete, Lee Eun-hae suddenly spoke up and made an abrupt suggestion. She enthusiastically proposed that instead of leaving immediately, the whole group should try one final adventurous activity, diving into the river by jumping from a high cliff and only then return home. She explained that doing so wouldn't waste this trip and would create more memorable and interesting experiences for the whole group. The suggestion sounded appealing to young people who liked adventure, but was extremely dangerous for someone like Sang-yeob. Obviously, he completely didn't want to attempt this dangerous challenge. However, peer pressure gradually weighed heavily on him. Among the 5 people remaining at the scene, after Kim and his girlfriend had gone to the car, 4 people enthusiastically agreed with Lee Eun-hae's idea. Under that pressure, he finally had to reluctantly agree and climb up the jumping rock with everyone else, a natural cliff about 13 feet high above the water surface. And one notable detail that couldn't be ignored was that the 2 men who enthusiastically agreed and supported this adventurous idea from the start, even actively persuading others to participate, were none other than Cho Hyun-soo and the man surnamed Lee, 2 men who both had unusual relationships with Lee Eun-hae. This coincidence couldn't help but raise questions about the real motive behind it. Even when everyone had climbed onto the cliff and was ready to jump, Sang-yeob still appeared hesitant, standing trembling on the edge of the high rock, not daring to step forward. Seeing this, Lee Eun-hae began using challenging, mocking words targeting the man's self-esteem. Not stopping there, she even threatened that if her husband didn't dare to jump, then she herself, a woman, would do it to prove it wasn't too difficult. These words, combined with pressure from those around and everyone's eyes focusing on him, put Joon Sang-yeob in a difficult position. And finally, Sang-yeob was forced to agree and jump like the other men. And then, as we all know, tragedy truly occurred. After that fateful jump, Joon Sang-yeob never surfaced again. Everyone panicked, calling his name in the darkness, while Cho Hyun-soo, who was nearest, was the first to call the police. When rescue forces arrived, They dove into the water in the night, trying to find the victim. After a while, Joon Sang-yeob's body was brought up from the stream bed. At that moment, the atmosphere was filled with silence and bewilderment. No one could believe that the cheerful camping trip just hours before had ended in such tragedy. However, during the reinvestigation of the case, police quickly noticed unusual signs in Lee Eun-hae's testimony. This woman, who had appeared grief-stricken on television, seemed extremely contradictory when facing the investigating agency. She didn't pass the lie detector test, and her justifications began to collapse bit by bit. Eun-hae claimed she didn't hear her husband's cries for help at all. But Choi, the friend who went along that day, insisted she clearly heard a loud scream from the water direction right after Sang-yeob jumped down. Additionally, according to forensic examination, many air bubbles were found in both of Sang-yeob's lungs, and the cause of bubble formation was because the victim had continuously struggled in the water. Or to put it simply, after Sang-yeob fell into the water, he continuously splashed water trying to save himself. Splashing sounds like that weren't small, yet no one claimed to hear them. Truly absurd. Hyun-soo told police that Sang-yeob's landing point when jumping was very close to him. After realizing something was wrong, Ms. Choi went with Yun-hae to look for a life preserver, while Hyun-soo swam to where Sang-yeob had jumped into the water. By common logic, you should naturally be able to find someone at such a close distance. Yet Hyun-soo said he couldn't see Sang-yeob because it was too dark. After the incident occurred, as Sang-yeob's wife, Eun-hae, showed no sadness at all. She leisurely stayed with her lover and demanded $800,600,000 in insurance money from the insurance company. But the insurance company wasn't foolish either. They discovered this insurance contract was behind on premiums, with only 4 hours left before expiration, but precisely before expiration, Sang-yeob died unexpectedly from drowning. This seemed like an insurance fraud case, so they immediately refused to pay compensation. This made Eun-hae extremely anxious. She was forced to seek out media outlets to accuse the insurance company. However, she couldn't have imagined that this very choice became the key to exposing the entire conspiracy she and her lover had carefully concealed. From here, the truth began to be revealed, and the South Korean public was not only horrified by the crime, but also curious about the woman behind it all. Lee Eun-hae. Lee Eun-hae was born in 1991 in Gangseo, Incheon, into a family where both parents were disabled, in extremely difficult circumstances. The entire family was crammed into a tiny house of only 215 square feet and relied on subsidies to survive. Initially, their family had no social status and no one knew about them. But in 2002, the family's life took a major turn. A support program for building and renovating homes for people in difficult circumstances called Sunday Night Love House came to Eun-hae's family to help. At this time, Eun-hae was only in 6th grade and had a rather cute appearance, looking very obedient and well-behaved. Despite her poor family circumstances, the little girl remained optimistic. She never looked down on her parents and wanted to become a singer after growing up, so she could best care for her parents' lives and repay their nurturing kindness. Eun-hae even promised back then that when she grew up, she would help people in difficulty as much as she had received. After the program aired, the image of the gentle, filial, and hard-working little Eun-hae quickly won the favor of the South Korean people. She was affectionately called a little angel by the public and became someone else's child in the eyes of parents in South Korea. But everything changed in no time. The little angel from that day disappeared. Eun-hae seemingly forgot her dream of becoming a singer. Though young, she was already working as a prostitute. According to investigations, at 15, Eun-hae began being a sugar baby for a middle-aged man. After receiving 160,000 won, about $120 from him, Eun-hae felt this was truly an easy way to make money. Through introductions from friends and the internet, she seduced and became a sugar baby for many men. But when she had money, Eun-hae didn't care about her parents at all. Right at this time, she met Hyun-soo, who took on the role of finding customers for Eun-hae. They cooperated to make money together, then developed a romantic relationship. Eun-hae even created a special list for her customers. used to record customers' characteristics and preferences. Later, she also stole and did other services to make money faster. This made her a regular at the police station with various different charges. From a young age, she had to go to South Korean juvenile court 5 times and was investigated by police no fewer than 10 times. Even when she had just turned 19, Eun-hae became pregnant and gave birth to a baby girl, though it was unclear who the baby's father was. But even while pregnant, she still went to bars to lure men. After the baby was born, Yunhi heartlessly gave her daughter to her disabled parents to care for, while she continued her days of debauchery. Although she had made a lot of money through being a sugar baby and fraud, she spent money very lavishly, always wanting to use the most expensive things, so couldn't save a single penny. Additionally, Yunhi also underwent cosmetic surgery. In the following years, she continuously came and went with many different men and earned quite a bit of money from them. In 2016, Eun-hae met Sang-yeob. He was born in 1980 and was 11 years older than Lee. From photos, you could see Sang-yeob had a gentle and simple appearance, and in reality, that was exactly right. Sang-yeob was always hardworking and careful. He worked as a researcher at a major company in South Korea. Sang-yeob had worked here for 15 years and had an income of 64 million won, about $48,000, per year. Although it couldn't be considered wealthy in South Korea, this salary was fairly decent. He treated Eun-hae very well. As long as she requested something, he was willing to pay for it, while being thrifty with himself, never spending excessively. Every month, he handed his entire salary over to Eun-hae. They registered their marriage in the fall of 2016. By common theory, a woman who met such a good man should be grateful. But for Eun-hae, that still wasn't enough, because what she wanted wasn't a good man nor a proper family, but a wealthy person. After marriage, she continuously made demands to constantly take money from her husband, and each time she succeeded. But Sang-yeob's unlimited indulgence not only didn't bring him happiness, but also led him into tragedy. Their marriage was very strange. The two were completely unlike a married couple. After marriage, Sang-yeob's parents gave him 100 million won, about $75,000, plus money borrowed from outside, and he was able to buy a cozy newlywed home. But even that couldn't satisfy Eun-hae's vain habits. She used the excuse of not wanting her husband to have a hard commute to make John rent a place near his company and live alone, while the new house was for her and friends to gather. The two only met on weekends. But even on weekends, Eun-hae also found reasons to avoid seeing her husband, so weekly meetings became monthly meetings. They didn't hold a wedding, but simply signed the marriage registration papers. Even before that, throughout the entire dating process and preparation to buy the newlywed house in Incheon, Joon Sang-yeob had never once been taken by Lee Eun-hae to meet her family. This situation continued until one day when Joon Sang-yeob completely couldn't contact Lee Eun-hae, despite trying to call and text many times. In a state of worry and confusion, he decided to proactively go to her parents' house address to inquire. And that was also the only time, the first and last time, he set foot in his in-laws' house during that brief marriage. Not only that, but both families and relatives on both sides had never had the opportunity to meet each other. Joon Sang-yeob, as a responsible husband wanting to build a proper family, had many times urged and suggested Lee Eun-hae arrange a meeting so both families could get acquainted and interact with each other. However, each time, Lee Eun-hae always found all sorts of reasons and excuses to shirk, delay, and cleverly refuse. Looking at all this behavior, one thing was clear. Lee Eun-hae absolutely didn't want anyone to know the truth that she was married. But the most confusing and suspicious thing of all lay in the extremely large difference in living standards between the couple, a difference so great it was hard to believe they were people in the same family. While Lee Eun-hae lived an extremely lavish and extravagant life, she frequently traveled everywhere, constantly gathered and partied with friends, ate out at luxury restaurants daily, shopped for expensive items, and enjoyed all material pleasures. Joon Sang-yeob fell into extreme poverty. After handing over his entire monthly salary to his wife at her request, He didn't have enough money even to cover his most basic needs. He didn't have money to buy adequate food or for minimum living expenses, to the point of living in severe deprivation. According to heartbreaking revelations from colleagues who worked in the same office as Joon Sang-yeob, he had completely changed in personality and behavior since getting married. The man who was previously cheerful, open, and friendly had gradually become cold, distant, and withdrawn. Particularly, one very notable change was that before marriage, Joon Sang-yeob had never had to borrow money from anyone. But after marrying Eun-hae, he began frequently having to borrow money from his colleagues. And the borrowed amounts were also very strange. For example, borrowing only 3,000 won, about $2.25. This meant he was deprived to the point of just wanting to borrow money to buy a lunchbox or a bottle of water. In phone data recovered by police, the text message content was truly unbelievable. After being made public, all of South Korea was shocked. On June 28th, just 2 days before Sang-yeob died, he sent a message to a colleague saying that when he went to work, he got to eat at the cafeteria, but on weekends he had nothing to eat at all. After 2 consecutive weeks, John had lost up to 31 pounds. The car that Sang-yeob borrowed money to buy was also for Eun-hae's full use. His task was to pay off the debt and pay for gas. Although Sang-yeob had tried this hard, Eun-hae was still not satisfied, continuously demanding money from her husband. And to please his wife, Sang-yeob even took out high-interest loans, including online loans. Fortunately, he later didn't complete those transactions. During the investigation, police also discovered that money from loan accounts Sang-yeob had applied for all went into Eun-hae's account. In fact, in over 2 years since marriage, Eun-hae had demanded about 2 billion won, about $1.5 million, from her husband for various reasons. A marriage had completely changed Sang-yeob's life. From someone with a simple life, he was gradually driven to a dead end. Not only defrauding her pitiful husband, Eun-hae had an even more vicious plan. Right from the moment the two married, she had laid out a plan. 5 months after they married, Eun-hae began buying insurance for her husband, buying up to 4 policies with insurance coverage totaling 800 million won, $600,000. Midway through, due to lack of money, she frequently owed insurance premiums. However, each time before expiration, Eun-hae always timely renewed her husband's insurance packages. You could see how important these insurance packages were to her. But unfortunately, someone as kind-hearted as Sang-yeob didn't suspect anything and continued obeying his wife. On June 30th, 2019, 4 hours before the 4 insurance packages would expire due to lack of renewal money, an accident happened to Sang-yeob. Eun-hae chose nighttime when visibility was poor to pressure her husband, who couldn't swim, to jump into the water. Both other people who participated in this final activity had close relationships with her. The person in position nearest where Sang-yeob jumped into the water was Eun-hae's lover, Hyun-soo. But he pretended not to be able to find him, so couldn't save Jeon. Everything was too coincidental. And from these details you could see this was an organized and planned murder. And the person who planned it was Eun-hae and her lover Hyun-soo. After the incident occurred, Lee Eun-hae and Cho Hyun-soo quietly returned to the rented room that Joon Sang-yeob had been staying in, not just once, but twice. Their purpose was to thoroughly clean up all data on Sang-yeob's personal computer, taking all hard drives and documents that could be disadvantageous to them. Not stopping there, Eun-hae also took the entire rental deposit and completed the procedures to return the room. However, when the investigation was expanded, horrifying secrets were gradually exposed. Police discovered that the drowning in Gapyeong Valley wasn't the first time Eun-hae tried to kill her husband. For many months before, she had secretly planned meticulously, step by step, leading her husband to death's door. Specifically, in February 2019 at a farm in Gapyeong Gyeonggi Province, Lee Eun-hae secretly mixed pufferfish poison into Sang-yeob's food. However, Sang-yeob only suffered severe stomach pain and vomiting. Not long after, police recovered a social media conversation between Eun-hae and Hyun-soo. In it, Eun-hae appeared annoyed, complaining that, "I put in enough poison, but it still had no effect." In May 2019, at a salmon fishing spot in Jeongdo, Sang-yeob, who couldn't swim, fell into the water by chance. At that time, Eun-hae stood on shore just watching without helping. Fortunately, a friend of Sang-yeob's appeared and timely saved him. At that time, that friend thought perhaps Yunhi couldn't swim, which is why she didn't jump down to save her husband. But later, in videos that Yunhi posted of going out, you could see she swam very well and professionally. In fact, this marriage from the start was a trap, because Yunhi's entire family and friends didn't know she was married. Even the friends who went out with Sang-yeob that day didn't know either. Except for Hyun-soo's accomplice, others didn't know Sang-yeob was Eun-hae's husband, because at first, when introducing her husband, Eun-hae only said he was a close friend. Here, the investigation into Sang-yeob's case was considered complete. But the investigation into suspect Eun-hae continued. Police discovered she might be a suspect in other cases. Before marrying Joon in 2016, Eun-hae had married 2 other men, and quite coincidentally, their fates were exactly the same. In 2010, Eun-hae's boyfriend at that time was in a car accident at an intersection in Gimpo, Incheon. After that, Eun-hae received a large sum in compensation. In 2014, this woman went with her fiancé surnamed Lee to Pattaya, Thailand for vacation. During scuba diving, Eun-hae's fiancé unfortunately drowned. As his fiancé, Eun-hae once again received insurance compensation. In the period from 2016 to 2019, Eun-hae committed many other insurance fraud acts. On December 13, 2021, the prosecutor's office summoned Eun-hae and Hyun-soo for questioning. When called the second time, these 2 people had fled without a trace. A large-scale manhunt took place immediately after. On March 30, 2022, South Korean police officially issued arrest warrants for Eun-hae and Hyun-soo on charges of murder and insurance fraud. Some people asked why this case occurred in 2019, but wasn't discovered until 2022. Weren't there people who suspected when there were so many suspicious circumstances? In fact, there were people who suspected and conducted investigations. Online, there were also quite a few people discussing this case. Some even suspected Eun-hae. However, Eun-hae and Hyun-soo were very internet savvy and quickly reported opposing comments online. Therefore, some videos and posts were taken down, and some people even had to pay compensation for this. So the case didn't receive attention until now. In reality, this police reinvestigation mainly stemmed from Eun-hae's bottomless greed. She herself went to the television program to accuse the insurance company. She certainly couldn't have imagined that this very act pushed her into tragedy. This case also exploded in the news, triggering an entire wave of online pursuit of the perpetrator. On April 12, 2022, Busan police received a report that someone had seen Eun-hae and Hyun-soo at a restaurant in Yeomdong, Busan. Police immediately went to the scene, but unfortunately that couple wasn't the 2 suspects, because it was during the pandemic, everyone wore masks. However, this trip wasn't completely useless. When police investigated the man who looked like Hyun-soo, they accidentally discovered he was also a wanted criminal in another case. South Korean police also tracked Eun-hae and Hyun-soo's bank accounts and phone signals. But since being wanted, these 2 had never used them. It seemed they had prepared well for this flight. Notably, besides organizations enthusiastically helping police solve the case, many fan groups supporting Eun-hae even appeared. On April 16, 2022, police finally arrested Eun-hae and Hyun-soo. South Korean police said that from early April, they had been monitoring near Samseong Station on Seoul Metro Line 3 in Yongin City. They had seen images of Eun-hae and Hyun-soo. Thus, police had tightened the net and begun searching gradually. When about to find the 2 suspects' hiding place, police suddenly received a call from Eun-hae's father, reporting that these 2 were hiding in a nearby office building. Police then immediately rushed to the scene. Both suspects were caught in a newly built office building. When arrested, both looked very tired and thinner. The belongings around them were only a few bottles of mineral water left. After questioning, this couple stated they always chose city centers, densely populated places to hide, because they believed the most dangerous place was the safest place. Both were then transferred to the local prosecutor's office in Incheon City. Finally, Yunhi and Hyun-soo were sentenced to life in prison for the crimes they committed, ending the insurance murder case that shook South Korea. And that's today's case. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next videos.